got my mind on eternity. Some kind of ecstasy got a hold on me, and I'm wondering where the lions are. 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 I'm wondering where the lions are.
Welcome back to the Where the Lions Are interviews. Tonight it's really a great pleasure to have as my guest, directly from his home in Durango, the great Thom Chacon. So welcome Thom, and thank you for being here as our guest and actually as our second lion.
Well, thank you for having me, Dave. I appreciate it. You know, it's an honor to be here.
Likewise for me, Thom. It's really a great honor. And Mary Gauthier once said that you are a true writer, and you have literally traveled the world with your music, with your songs from Folsom Prison to Thailand, India, Europe. We will talk about that. We will talk about the interplay between your songwriting and the great outdoors, the rivers and the mountains of the Rockies where you live. But I'll start from the beginning. I read somewhere that you were born and raised in California, and also that you were a horse riding instructor. So can you tell us something about that period and how you decided to move to Durango, Colorado?
I was born in Southern California, down in Chula Vista, which is, basically San Diego, very close to the border at Tijuana, Mexico. And so that's where I was born, and then my folks moved my sisters and I up to Northern California, and so I spent most of my childhood and teenage years in Northern California. But I always wanted to live in the Rocky Mountains. I was just attracted to those higher altitudes, and in particular the high desert and the alpine. And Durango, Colorado, where I live now, sits at just under 7,000 feet, and we're on the cusp between the high desert and the alpine. So, kind of looks like to the south of us looks like a John Wayne movie, and to the north of us looks like something right out of, Jeremiah Johnson or some, fur trapper kind of film. But anyway, that's why I moved. That's the why on Durango. Before I moved here, I was living in Los Angeles, out in Hollywood, California, trying to sell my songs, and trying to make it in the music business. And at that time, you really had to be in either Nashville or New York or LA. Now arguably you can exist outside of those cities with the invention of what we're doing right now, So, but when I was living in Los Angeles, to get out of the city, I got a job working at a ranch up in the Hollywood Hills, and taking people for horseback rides. So that's, to answer that part of your question, that's what I was doing to survive in the city. Even though there were parts of the city I really enjoyed, I really, got tired of the traffic and the hustle and bustle. So working at this ranch kind of saved my life, and it in some ways led me to the Rocky Mountains. So where I still do horseback trips up here in the high country. But anyway, I moved out here 15 years ago because there were more trout than people, and I wanted to go fishing. So there you have
it. Okay, and about fishing, I'm really curious to know what it means for you to live in Durango. I mean, your daily life now divided between your profession as a guide and your profession as a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, I mean, the mountains to me, first of all, are it's home. And I knew when I got to the Rockies and when I first lived here, and then I'd go on a tour and I'd travel around, and I still love to travel and see new places. But every time I come back to Durango, I have this overwhelming sense of this is where I belong, you know. And there's that, and it's the vastness. When you fly into Durango, you see the La Plata Mountains, you see the San Juans, and it's just an amazing feeling. You know, the clean air, you know, the altitude, and you know, the fishing is so good here. So that's what really makes me tick. But yeah, I think this is the place I'll probably always come back to, even though, you know, I'm traveling around and doing that sort of thing. The balance between music and being a fishing guide is a good one for me. You know, I sometimes think I wish I were doing one more than the other, and that's typically I wish I were playing more music. But it is a pretty good balance, because when you're on the water 100 days a year or more, you know, there's something that physically happens to your body and your mind. You get a lot of vitamin D from the sun, and you keep your body going because it's a very physical job. And I really don't think about music when I'm rowing the boat down the river, or I'm packing, you know, horses up into the high country. I'm really focused on that task, because, you know, there's a lot of safety concerns going on here too. And then when I'm away from that, I can all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I sit down to write a song, and it's almost like I got so much fresh mountain air through my lungs, through my body, that I can really settle in pretty quickly and be very comfortable moving to that songwriter person, that songwriter brain. And so it's a good balance. It really is. I love it.
Yeah, I can perfectly understand the feeling. Well, I've chosen a few songs from your discography that kind of describe your relationship with the great outdoors, because I saw this kind of red thread connecting them, starting with Hills of Butte, where you sang, if this life becomes too much, to the mountains I will ride. But also on this note, Big River, because you said, Big River, take me away, I'm lying on your shoreline, depression's here to stay, Big River, I need saved. And then we arrive to the last two albums, where we can find Easy Heart and obviously Church of the Great Outdoors. And here, to me, it seems that you have reached some sort of quietness, because I quote Easy Heart in particular, floating down the river, deep and dark, with a quiet mind and an easy heart. So, how has your relationship with the natural environment changed over the years, and how were these 4 songs born?
The first thing I'll say is, what a great, thoughtful question you've asked. And as you were describing all of that, I realized that, The Hills Outside of Butte was written. That was a song I wrote before I moved to the mountains, still living in the city. And then going through those other songs you described, my mom passed away during Big River, and that kind of came into play there. And now that you've mentioned all that, it makes sense to me that I was trying to find my way through that grief of losing my mom in particular, and finding my way to the Rocky Mountains, where I finally felt like I was at home. And, as a songwriter, I guess I didn't realize that I was writing it down in that chronological order, but that's kind of how that happened. And And I think being in the mountains, healed me in a lot of ways. And so, all the way through Easy Heart, where, I described floating down the river and forgetting all of my troubles, basically. So yeah, very, very powerful connection to the outdoors that has, I think at age, how old am I now? 48. I have sort of been able to figure out a way to go outside and take a deep breath. Your problems never go away, and there's new challenges every day, right? But I do have a way of dealing with them now. It's my church, it's my church. I go out there. That's where I pray and really I can breathe there. So very, very good question. Very good question. I hope I answered it. Yeah, I hope I answered it. Okay.
Sun up on the river of lost souls. Quarter moon is wavering all alone. Floating down the river deep and dark, with a quiet mind and a easy heart. Moving the direction the water's flowing. Ain't worried about tomorrow where I'm going. Rowing down the river deep and dark, with a quiet mind and a easy heart. Holding tight, pulling on the oars. I'm alive, my spirit needs no more.
Well, now I want to ask you something about two different songs, because many of your songs tell stories, and these two, they are really interesting in my opinion. They are Grant County Side and Empty Pockets. So where do they come from?
Yeah, Grant County Side, I wrote about my grandfather, my dad's dad, Petronilo Chacon was his name, and he, believe it or not, was born way back in 1856, and he's my grandfather, not my great grandfather. But anyway, so my granddad worked as a deputy sheriff in Silver City, New Mexico, in the 1870s and the 1880s. The Wild West. And so, growing up, I heard 100 stories about his adventures. And so Grant County Side is loosely based on all of those stories that I heard about my grandfather when I was a kid. So, also inspired by, the Sergio Leone and that whole Italian Western, spaghetti Western, movie series, certainly Ennio Morricone, that sound. I didn't achieve that by a long shot, but that's what I was hearing in my head. And so I was just fascinated by those movies and completely enamored with the history of my grandfather. And so that's how that song was written. That's the Grant County Side part. Grant County is the county, and Silver City is in Grant County. So that's where that's from. Yeah. Empty Pockets was written and inspired by the drought here in the Rocky Mountain West. We're still in drought conditions. We haven't gotten enough snow over the past several years, hasn't rained enough. And the ground saturation is not what it should be. So we're in drought conditions. And so, as an observer, I saw ranchers and farmers suffering, and really it really hit home because I make part of my living fishing for trout, and I make a living catching them and putting them back into the river. And this won't surprise you, are very dependent on snowpack and rain. And if the rivers aren't full of water, then the trout aren't going to be there to be caught and released. So I wrote that. I was thinking a lot about that, and Empty Pockets was written from the perspective of a farmer who's gone broke. His land has gone fallow. He can't make a living. He is at his wits' end. God has forsaken him, kind of a thing, And so that's what that song's about. And a really great songwriter many years ago told me, you never write a song, and Dave, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but you never write a song that isn't about yourself in some way or another. So when I listen to Empty Pockets or I play it, I think, oh yeah, I was really singing about, my financial hardship, and my hardship when it came to the drought was affecting my trout fishing and so on and so forth. So.
Empty pockets and dust in my eyes. I've run out of water and the ground is dry. No sign of rain, not a cloud in the sky. Empty pockets and dust in my eyes. I am a farmer like my father before. Now our crops are dying and the family is poor. No sign of rain, not a cloud in the sky. Empty pockets and dust in my eyes.
And from the drought of Empty Pockets, we arrive now to your commitment to the anti-fracking campaign. I'm talking about an album that is called Buy This Fracking Album, and here one of your songs appears. So how did you get involved in this project?
I got involved for several reasons. One, where I live here in the Southwest, there's a lot of oil and gas activity, and there's always a clash of ideas and beliefs. How bad do we need the fossil fuels as a resource? And the answer is we do to some extent depend on the fossil fuels, but at what cost is, I guess, what I was really thinking of when I wrote that song. At what cost do we continue to depend on fossil fuels? And so there's a balance, and there's always two sides to a story, and we all leave a footprint and drive cars and heat our homes, and we use these resources. But from where I was coming from with that song was I had done a bunch of research, and I know people who live in places where there's oil and gas activity on their property, and it's a long story of mineral rights and blah blah blah. But sometimes the big oil and gas companies can they have a lot of leverage, they have a lot of money, and sometimes there's situations where they put their equipment near somebody's home. And so I read an article about this family up in Weld County, Colorado, who they were getting sick and they thought it was from the fracking rig that was near their home. And so I got to thinking that here's these people, they don't have any money, they don't have any clout, they're apparently getting sick from this, and they really didn't have the power to change anything or even be heard. So that sort of made me angry, and so I thought, I'm going to write a song from their perspective, whether it's right or wrong. I thought it was an interesting story, and my first job as a songwriter is to tell a good story. So that's why I wrote that song. I thought, well, this is an important issue, and if I can bring shed some light on it and make people at least think about it, then that's what I want to do.
I am John from Weld County. Work this land to raise my family. We were doing fine until last year, before the drilling rigs got here. Pollute my well and burn my soil. You rape the earth of gas and oil. All was beauty and the air was clear, before the drilling rigs got here.
So I was asked to do that, and I wouldn't call myself an environmentalist, but I try and do my part to preserve nature, because I do enjoy the great outdoors, and I make money out there too. So I have interests in all of that. But it was a fun song to write, and I felt good about the album, and Steve Earle was on it, and Bonnie Raitt, and so that's how that happened. And I'll continue to do things like that and write songs for things I believe in. But yeah, that's how that worked.
Okay, so you did write a song for this project.
I was approached, hey, how do you feel about this? Would you be interested in writing a song? And I thought, yeah, I'm really interested in this. I don't know if I'm going to come up with a song that's any good. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I found what I wanted to write about, how I wanted to present it. I didn't want to come out, banging fists on the drum, and I just didn't think that wasn't the approach that I wanted to go by. It felt better to tell a story through the eyes of someone who is being negatively affected by it.
Yeah, sure. A Townsend way, we could say, doing politics, telling a story.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Bonnie Raitt and Steve Earle. I ask you, have you had a chance to meet them?
I've never met Bonnie Raitt. I did get the chance to meet Steve Earle, not through that project, but somewhere else at one of his shows, and Steve was really affable and really open and talked to me for quite a while, and he was just a good guy. But I told him when I saw him, when I recorded one of my albums, the self-titled record, we made vinyl, and the record label I was on at the time, they asked me, who do you want to send this to? And we'll try and get it to them, And so I listed 5 artists that I wanted to send it to that were my influences, and Steve Earle was one of them. And so there was a publicist there, the 2 people at the record label, a booking agent, and everyone said, okay, we'll do our best to get this record to Steve Earle. Well, you know how that goes. It never gets to them. And of course, even if it did, they never listened to it. But so I, when I went to go see Steve, I brought one of my vinyl records with me because there was my big chance to finally give him my music. So I bought one of his vinyl records and he signed it. And I said, hey, Steve, quickly, you know, I'm a big fan. Here's my music. And he picked up the vinyl record and he goes, oh man, I got like 5 of these things. So everybody had sent it, got it to him. And he literally looked at the cover and it was like, Jesus Christ, thanks. And I apologize. We both laughed about it, but anyway. And then he said something like, hey, yeah, pretty good songwriting or something like that. You know, I doubt he ever gave it a spin, but I can't blame him. He was probably pissed that I sent him 5 vinyl records.
Nice story. And the other 4 that you mentioned?
Oh, we sent one. We sent one to Tom Petty.
I think it was more difficult to reach the guy than Steve Earle.
Yeah, no. We sent, and I forget who else. Probably Chris Christopherson, I'm sure. We're sure we tried to get one to him. And, you know, I knew Al Bonetta, who was John Prine's manager, and I'm sure we tried to get one to John Prine. But anyway, yeah, Steve Earle got 5 of them. Plus the one I tried to give him at the gig, but he was like, no, I'm not taking it.
Yeah, great story. Well, passing on, this is something I asked Colin Linden too. It's something about life as a writer. And so, have you ever experienced dry spells in your songwriting, and how do you deal with these moments that can happen?
Yeah, I absolutely, over 30 years, have had many times where I was in a dry spell or whatever we want to call it. And I just go fishing. That's it. I just go fishing. And then I come out of it. And sure, you're scared that you might not ever write another lyric. Knock on wood. So far, if I go fishing, then I come back and I can write again. I mean, look, right now, and maybe this is the kiss of death, but there's so much going on in the world and in the United States. It's almost too much to write about. So, but anyway, yeah, I have those times, and I try not to force it. But I love playing the guitar too, and sitting around, and even if you're not coming up with something that you think is any good, it's still fun spending the time. And if you've got your little hand recorder handy, sometimes you'll get, like Bruce Springsteen describes all these songs he's written, and sometimes they don't ever come together as a song, but he's writing something else, and he'll take a chorus from this one and a bridge from that one, and kind of like being at the junkyard, you know, the car pulling carburetors out of this and that and the other stuff.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Colin Linden, and you both have a live record as your very first album release, which is certainly an unusual choice. So I ask you, how did this decision come about?
Yeah, it wasn't planned. It was just, you know, as a songwriter, I had written a lot of songs by that point, and playing live at Folsom Prison was just such a crazy, unique opportunity that it just seemed like there it was. We recorded it. What are we going to do with it? Let's put it out, you know. And there wasn't a lot of thought involved. maybe there should have been, yeah. But anyway, that's just how it worked out.
Yeah, and well, do you want to share something about that concert? How did it happen? How did it go?
Yeah. Johnny Cash had just passed away, and it was my way of trying to honor him and remember him and be like him, as much as I could. I'm a big fan, like many of us are, and so I had my producer Perry Margoliff try and get a hold of the warden at Folsom Prison, which he did, and then they sent the warden my songs, and he said, well, I like the subject matter. These are songs of redemption and men failing at being men, and struggle. So he liked the subjects of the songwriting. So that's how that happened. He thought it would be good for them to hear this, the inmates. And so that's, they picked a date, July 4th, which is Independence Day here in the United States, 2004. And I brought a bass player and a drummer, and we played as a 3-piece in the yard in front of 350 inmates. And it was incredible. I mean, the energy was incredible, and the being there, there's always a risk involved when you go into a prison. Things could go wrong, and so there was that element of danger. It was also Folsom, California was about, 10 miles from where I grew up. So I kind of grew up in the shadow of Folsom Prison. And so there was a very nostalgic part of that for me to be playing at Folsom Prison, where, I grew up in that area. And it was very, I would say life-changing experience. The inmates had a look of survival in their eyes that I'll never forget. I'll never, ever forget that. A look that you don't get unless you've been through what they've been through. And so it was very, very life-changing, and it felt good to do that. Even, the worst of the worst, it felt like the right thing to do, just to give them a reprieve for an hour, even though they may or may not deserve to be there. I felt like that was a good thing to go in and play for them. And we joked about it later, but we got a great response from them, but we figured out that, hey, they had nothing better to do. So what, where else were they going to go? It was either go see the concert or go sit in your cell. So we didn't pat ourselves on the back too much, but it was fun. It was fun and profound.
Yeah, well, I think you can feel that kind of vibe in the record. So I think you can pat yourself on the back a little bit at least.
Cool. Yeah, it was. We survived.
Yeah. Well, anyway, talking about live shows, I mentioned that you toured India and Thailand. So I'm curious, how did it happen that you go all the way to India and Thailand to play?
Yeah. That was in 2011, I believe. And my producer, Perry, was working with a singer-songwriter, an Indian singer-songwriter, East Indian singer-songwriter named Lucky Ali. Great guy, great songwriter, big star in India. He's a big name over there. And he was going to write he sings in Hindi. And so he wanted to write an album where he sings in English. And so he talked with my producer, Perry, about doing that. And then they brought me in to write with him. You were talking about co-writing earlier, which we did. We wrote and some songs. But more than anything, I think he wanted me to listen to his lyrics and make sure that the grammar made sense and the slang was right and just the vibe of it, since he didn't live in the United States, although he went to school in the United States. So I signed on to help Lucky, and in the meantime, he said, why don't you play some shows and I'll help you book some shows too while you're here. So I went over and, for 3 weeks, we wrote songs and, I opened a show for him and then played a couple other gigs and, some other towns up Bangalore and down in Kerala. And then naturally, since we were all the way over there, it made sense to do some shows in other places in Asia. So we booked some gigs in Thailand, which was a total trip. American folk, I think, at that time had not caught on. People were looking at me like, what in the hell is that? It was funny. But, you go and you experience these things, and that's what you do.
Yeah.
Come, for better or for worse. I didn't go over great in Thailand. Although India was amazing. India, they were really great listeners, and they're just music lovers. And so you can't go wrong. That was an amazing experience. Every audience in India was really, really amazing. It was great. So that's how that happened.
Yeah. But now I'm wondering, what's the worst or the weirdest memory that you have of that tour?
Oh. Well, I did in India. In India, I was walking around a tea plantation, and a leech crawled up my boot and down into my sock and attached itself to my leg. And 3 hours later, when I was changing into shorts because it was hot outside, I found a leech that was the size of a 12 gauge shotgun shell on my leg. Oh my God, it freaked me out. So I knocked it off my leg, and you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, take a lighter and burn them out so they'll back out. And my leg bled for like 12 hours or something. It was crazy. So I suppose that was the craziest thing that happened in India. And of course, I got sick from the food about 3 weeks into it. The food was amazing, but I had one little bite of something at a roadside somewhere where I shouldn't have eaten. And so I came home about, I guess, maybe a week after I got sick, and I had lost like 15 pounds or something. And when I got home, my wife was like, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" It did not look very good.
Well, I hope you didn't have the same experience in Italy. Anyway, Italy is a place where now you are very well known and loved, and you came back this very summer. And by the way, we met in Chiari, and so about the experience in Italy, I was wondering, what do you feel when you're playing on stage in front of an audience, but knowing that they are not understanding what you are talking about?
That's a good question. Before I say anything about that, I want to say that when I come home from the Italy tours, I'm 15 pounds heavier.
so you have to compensate.
So I need to do like the Italy tour and then go to India.
That's a good
Then
plan.
I'll come back the same weight.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I think I'm going to do it. Yeah, what can I say? I think that when first of all, what I've realized over the years is that so many people in Europe in general, and in particular Italy, speak very good English. So I feel like some of it's lost, some of what I'm singing is lost in translation, but much of it is being understood. And the other really great thing about music listeners in Italy is that they do their homework. So by the time I get there to play the show, not only have they listened to the songs, but they've actually looked them up or maybe even translated some of them. Like my album Blood in the USA, if you bought the CD, the Italian lyrics were in there next to the English lyrics. So some of it is lost in translation, but I'll tell you, I don't feel like any of the sentiment is lost on the Italian audience, because you guys are so passionate and you feel the minor chords going to the major chords and the lift and the drop and the journey of the song. And I know if I'm listening to an Italian opera or something like that, I have no idea what the lyrics are, but I could be in tears just from the music and the voice. And so I think it's the same thing when I'm playing. I'm feeling what the audience is feeling, and it's magic, man. It's nothing short of magic. It's some of the best audiences I've ever played in front of.
I'm worth more dead, 'cause baby, I'm living the American dream. I know I'm worth more dead, 'cause baby, I owe. Got a letter in the mail today, said we're gonna foreclose. I wanna check out of this place, but I'm broke. I'm living the American dream for sure. I'm worth more dead, 'cause baby, I'm living the American dream. I know I'm worth more dead, 'cause honey, 'cause baby,
Thank you. Grazie. We're going to take a short break. Stretch your legs, get a drink. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I'll say that what you have just said is pretty interesting, because, being an Italian playing in Italy, the experience you get is not always like that you have just described. To be honest, it's pretty rare. But I think you're right, because thinking about there is this kind of audience of experts of folk music, and probably thanks to folks like Andrea Parodi and somebody else. And when you got the chance to play in front of them, it's magical. I mean, for me it was like that this summer in Chiari, and also a month later when I opened for Andrea and his band in Parma. And I almost dropped some tears during while playing, because it was powerful, and I also got this feeling of this is what I wanna do, and also this is what playing music is supposed to be. It was powerful.
Yeah. Very powerful. You were great, by the way, at the Blues Festival.
Oh, thank you. I will pat myself.
Let's pat ourselves on the back. So you know what's funny? This is off subject, but when I brought Tony Garnier, Bob Dylan's bass player, and so I wasn't surprised, but a lot of people knew who he was. And when we went over there, and so everywhere we went at the gigs, people would immediately, hey, Tony Garnier, you know, and come up to him and ask for his autograph and stuff, which was great. And, you know, we joked a lot about it, but when we got to the Blues Festival, the band got a flat tire behind the stage. And so there was about 10 EMT workers that were sitting there waiting for the show to start. You know, they were ready to work. And Paolo Ercole went to pick up Tony at the hotel because Tony was so tired he had to sleep because we're doing 11 shows in a row. And so I stayed. He borrowed a car. I stayed and changed the tire, and which is, you know, why not? So I see the EMT people looking over at me like, oh, this poor guy's struggling. Anyway, I got the tire changed. And meanwhile, Tony Garnier shows up, and every one of the EMT workers knew him because they had gone to see Bob Dylan. So they immediately bum rushed him, and he's signing autographs and taking pictures and everything. And I'm down there like changing the tire. I'm all greasy and everything. And then we went and played the show. And when I got off stage, all the EMT workers were looking at me walking off stage, and they came up to me and they were like, oh my God, we thought you were the mechanic. I was like, that's so Tony was cracking it too. We thought you were well, I was the mechanic at that moment.
Well, you can add a new profession to your profile, you know.
Exactly.
Well, anyway, talking about Tony Garnier, I land this long journey, this long interview, by asking you something about this long collaboration you have with him, and also about something about the relationship with Mary Gauthier.
Yeah, so Tony, what can I say about Tony? I just love the guy to death. We have a lot in common. He's a big boxing fan. And actually, he fought in an amateur boxing match. He's been training for years. Anyway, we have that love for boxing. We share that love for boxing. And my cousin Bobby Chacon was a 2-time featherweight champ, and Tony was a big fan of Bobby's. Anyway. So working with Tony, having so much in common with him, is just so great, because it's like being there with one of your cousins or something, you know, and it's just get this great warm feeling with Tony. And he's one of the best upright bass players on the planet. So it's that too. And he's one of the best storytellers on the planet. Oh my gosh. So he's just a great guy to be around. But we've done probably 4 albums together, and I hope he'll do the next one with me, and I hope he'll come back to Italy with me as well, because we had a blast. And Mary, what can you say about Mary Gauthier? A kind soul. She's written some of the really best folk songs of our generation, I think. You know, Mercy Now and I Drink might be those 2 songs that define her career and this whole moment in folk music. And she's just someone I really look up to and have so much respect for. In fact, I just saw her at the Red River Folk Festival in New Mexico. She headlined on Friday, I think it was a Friday night, and I played the stage in the park on Saturday. So we got to see each other and catch up. I had played a festival alongside her in England years ago, and that's when I first met her. And then I got to hang out with her in Nashville for a little bit many years ago. So she's just this reoccurring person, this really wonderful soul that I'm so happy that she's in, and you know, I get to interact with her at all. And she was so nice to give me that wonderful as well. But what can I say? I look up to her, and you know, we all want to be as good as Mary Gauthier when it comes to writing songs.
Well, he'd get home at 5:30, fix his drink and sit down in his chair. Pick a fight with mama, complain about us kids getting in his hair. At night he'd sit alone and smoke. I'd see his frown behind his lighter's flame.
Well, Tom, thank you a lot for the time and for all the stories you shared.
Davide, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. You're a super talented songwriter, and this was a great interview. So I appreciate. I appreciate you. And we'll play some shows together next time I'm in Italy. Okay?
Or me in the States. Who knows?
Even better. All right, buddy. Grazie.
Bye, Tom.
Okay.
Of lost souls, a quarter moon is wavering in the dawn, rowing down the river deep and dark, with a quiet mind and a easy heart, with a quiet mind and a easy heart.
Wonder what Eliza